I remember it as if it were yesterday. 46 years ago at Royal Johannesburg, I got my first glimpse of the great man, Arnold Palmer, the king. He'd already won the Open Championship a couple of times, the Masters a couple of times, and everybody adored him, and for good reason. When Palmer walks into the room, you know something's happening. The man has charisma, he has style, and he's a man that made golf a game for the people. He changed golf forever. People watched him, and they all wanted to play the same game that Arnie played. For 4 years, we've been trying to get an exclusive interview, and it happened this year at the golf club that he owns in Orlando, Florida, Bay Hill. Mr. Palmer, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity of coming into your office and talking to you. What is your first memory of golf? At what age were you?
Oh my goodness! I started swinging a golf club when my father took me to work with him. I was about 3 years old, and he had a little set of clubs cut down, and I between just swinging the golf club and playing cowboys and Indians, that was my beginning.
There's a lovely story about you betting the ladies at the golf club when you were very young that you could hit over water at Latrobe.
Well, yes, that was a case of my wanting to play golf and not being able to get on the golf course. My father didn't allow me to. I was about 6 years old then. And whoops, hi puppy, that's my dog. And that will, he makes the day. That's Mulligan.
Mulligan, is it?
Yes, that makes it pretty natural that I like mulligans.
You never used to.
Yeah. Anyhow, when I was 6, I used to lie on the 6th tee at the club, and there was a ditch about 100 yards out, and the ladies would come by, and inevitably they would dribble the ball into the ditch. And one day, one of the ladies came to me, and she said, her name was Fritz, Mrs. Fritz. And she said, "Arnold, I'll give you a nickel if you hit my ball across that ditch." Well, what an opportunity that was. That was sort of the whole thing. And I got up and just whipped it right across the ditch for her. And she gave me a nickel, and I was there for a lot of years after that, waiting for her to come by.
In those days, what was the most fun for you, playing golf or being on the tractor with your father?
Well, you know, that's I enjoyed playing in the early days, but driving the tractor, that started out on my setting on his lap, and that old Fordson was a tough baby to steer. I had to stand up and do all the strength I had to steer that thing. At the same time, I enjoyed playing golf. I used to go by myself in the evening when the golf course was clear, and I would play 9 holes generally by myself, and that was sort of the beginning. I learned at an early time that the score was very important.
Let's go a few years further forward. When you were at college, one of your great friends passed away.
Right.
It was a big influence on your life.
Well, of course, going in the early days, I started playing in competition, and I met Bud Worsham, who incidentally was a brother to Lou Worsham. And we were playing national amateur type golf. And we talked about school and where we were going, and he told me he was going to a school called Wake Forest, and one thing led to another, and when we both graduated from high school, that's where we went. We went to Wake Forest, and that was one of the big influences on my life. And the unfortunate thing is that after 3.5 years of school and a relationship that was extremely close, it was a very great relationship, good friends, buddies. We did things together. And he got killed in an automobile accident, and that was a shock. It was a great shock to me. And of course, the next thing that happened is that I finished that semester in school and decided that I needed to get away. I needed to do something different. So I went in the service. I joined the Coast Guard, and I spent 3 years in the service.
Your win in the United States Amateur Championship was obviously the highlight of your amateur career.
That happened shortly after I got out of the service, actually. I went back to school for the semester that I hadn't finished, and played a lot of golf and taught the golf team. And then that summer, I was working in Cleveland, Ohio, as a manufacturer's rep, and played a lot of golf with my boss, which was a nice thing. And I sort of got ready and went to the amateur championship and had the good fortune to win that, and that was 1954.
At that time, did it ever enter your mind that you could have been the influence that you have been in golf?
Well, you know, I was working to survive, and I was playing golf because I loved it, and my purpose was to become successful. My father was a very tough taskmaster, and one of the things that inspired me was to play well enough to convince him that I could play the tour and win on the tour.
Your relationship with Mark McCormack?
Well, that started early in my life also. That was, Mark was at school at William and Mary in Virginia, and I was at Wake Forest, and our golf teams competed against each other. So that was a coincidence, and I met Mark early on, and we played against each other in college golf. And then after that, I, of course, won the amateur, turned pro, went on the tour, and one day I was playing in Cleveland again, and that's where Mark lived, and he came out and was walking on the tournament course, and he started a conversation, and that conversation was, would you consider letting me manage or represent you? Well, there were a lot of things that were involved in that, but I suppose the bottom line and the end result is that I agreed to have him represent me, and that's how we started.
Fantastic. There have been great rivalries in golf from the early days of Harry Varden through to Walter Hagen, Bobby Jones, and Gene Sarazen, and Sam Snead, and Ben Hogan, and Bo Nelson. But the greatest rivalry of all time was yourself, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Player.
Well, Jack was considerably younger than I was, and he had played very well. He won a number of amateurs. He was coming on very strong, and one day he came to me and he said, Arnie, he says, I think I'm going to turn pro. He said, could you help me? And I said, sure, what do you want? And he says, I'd like Mark McCormack to represent me. Well, actually that happened. I got with Mark, and I had asked Mark to keep our relationship exclusive, but I couldn't turn Jack down. So Mark helped Jack as he turned pro and went into the professional ranks, and it was good. Mark knew all the ropes and where to take Jack, and that went right on, and of course our relationship was one that was very competitive. Even though I was a lot older than Jack, we started competing from the moment we met each other, and odd as it may seem, we're still competing, even though we don't play the tour anymore. We are in business, we compete, and we're good friends, which is something that I'm very pleased about.
And Gary Player?
Much the same. Gary is one of my best friends, and we've competed against each other for years and years and years, and much the same story with Mark McCormick. Gary asked if Mark could help him, and he did, and of course that has been an ongoing relationship for many years also.